Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Arun Singh Thakur from Punjab University, Chandigarh. Today we are going to discuss about the module United Nations World Tourism Organization's Global Code of Ethics in Tourism Business from the paper Tourism and Hospitality Entrepreneurship and Legal Environment. This module deals with describing about global code of ethics in tourism business, which is set of suggested regulations by the apex body United Nations World Tourism Organization, that is UNWTO, for all the stakeholders responsible in the operations and the development of tourism industry. After studying this module, you will be able to understand the motive of UNWTO behind implementing the global code for the tourism industry, know the various articles of the code along with the explanation, then know the procedure suggested for implementation and follow-up code along with different directions for the public and private sector. So let us start. Global Code of Ethics for Tourism is a comprehensive set of principles designed to get a key players in the tourism development, addressed to the governments, the travel industry, communities and tourists alike. It aims to help maximize the sector's benefit with minimizing its potential negative impacts on the environment, cultural heritage and societies across the globe. United Nations World Tourism Organization is guided by the belief that tourism can make meaningful contribution to the people's lives and our planet. This conviction is at very heart of the Global Code of Ethics for Tourism, a roadmap for tourism development. I call on all to read, circulate and adopt the code of the benefits tourists, tour operators, host communities and their environment worldwide. These were the words of the Secretary General of United Nations World Tourism Organization, Taleb Rifai. Now we'll discuss the background of the Global Code of Ethics. United Nations World Tourism Organization adopted this Global Code of Ethics in 1999, but it was acknowledged 2 years later with the provisions of effective follow-up. This Code of Ethics is voluntary in nature and not a legal binding on the member states. Further, let us discuss the various principles of Global Code of Ethics for Tourism. The Code's 10 principles amply cover the economic, social, cultural and environmental components of travel and tourism. Article 1 states tourism's contribution to the mutual understanding and respect between the parties and societies. Article 2, tourism as a vehicle for individual and collective fulfillment. Then Article 3 is about tourism, a factor for sustainable development. Article 4 of the code says tourism, a user of the cultural heritage of mankind and contributor to its enhancement. Article 5 titled tourism, a beneficial activity for the host communities and communities in general. Then Article 6 titled obligations of stakeholders in the tourism development. Article 7 focuses the right to tourism. Article 8 is about liberty of the tourist movements. Then Article 9 is about right of the workers and entrepreneurs in the tourism industry. Article 10 is all about implementation of the principles of the Global Code of Ethics for Tourism. Now, dear students, we'll explain in detail about the articles from 1 to 10 as suggested by United Nations World Tourism Organization for its Global Code of Ethics in Tourism Business. So, Article 1, which is titled as tourism's contribution to mutual understanding and respect between people and societies. The promotion of such a responsible tourism, which promotes humanity with an attitude of tolerance and respect, diversified religions, cultural traditions, social values, and people from minority and indigenous classes to recognize their worth. It also suggested that there should be harmony between the tourism activities and the traditions of host communities and the countries while respecting the laws of the land practices and customs. Further, it says that the professionals as well as the host community should be provided education and training so as to understand hospitable behavior and respect to the tourist according to their lifestyle and expectation. Another point says the government of the countries should take responsibility for providing safety and security to the tourist, especially for the foreign tourist. There is need of information, security, assistance and protection from any attack and assault must be fulfilled religiously. And the last point in the Article 1 emphasizes the tourist should take the responsibility of not committing any criminal act or any act which can be considered as criminal as per the law of the country they are visiting. They should not abstain from the legal process of the country they are visiting. Any misconduct of the tourist which is injurious for the local community, resulting in degradation of the local environment, involvement in trafficking of drugs, arms and prohibited products should not be tolerable. And one more point added to it says it is also the responsibility of the tourist to make them self-aware before the departure about the health and security risk and desirable behavior in the countries they are intending to visit. Article 2 titled Tourism as Vehicle for Individual and Collective Fulfillment. So the explanation for the Article 2 is the Article 2 of the Global Code of Ethics emphasizes upon promoting tolerance and gender equality while protecting the human rights of most vulnerable societies. Further says that tourism is the leisure activity which is associated with the very important factor of self-education and learning. The planning for this activity should result in fulfillment of the objective of the tourist. It also emphasizes the activities in the tourism industry should be promoted in such a way so that the result in the quality of men and women promoting human rights, individual rights, children rights and the people from the vulnerable groups and the societies. Further, the cooperation of all the states and law enforcing agencies is required for the protection of human beings, particularly women and children from sexual abuse. Moreover, any other type of abuse, be it mental or physical, to anybody working in the industry or otherwise should be combated energetically. There is a great need to encourage the travel for the purpose of health, wellness, education, religion or social exchange which results in positive impacts to the society. And lastly, it emphasizes the educational institutes in their curriculum should include the study of the positive and negative impacts of the tourism industry so as to make human resource aware about it. Article 3, which is titled as Tourism, a Factor of Sustainable Development. It emphasizes that it is the accountability of all the stakeholders who are responsible for promoting a type of tourism which results in safeguarding the natural, cultural, social environment which equitably fulfills the need of the tourist and also protect the interest of the future generations as well. It further emphasizes that the tourism industry in its all form should promote the optimum utilization of the resources, particularly water and energy. Industry should avoid as far as possible the waste production, and thereby sustainable initiatives should be encouraged by the industry and public authorities. It also says that the distribution of the tourists in the mass tourism destinations should be diverted to other areas as per the concept of the carrying capacity, particularly during the times of school holidays and paid leave holidays. Another point emphasizes under this article is about natural heritage, which composed of ecosystem and biodiversity should not be found by the infrastructure development projects for tourism industry. The sensitive areas which preserve endangered species of wildlife should be kept out of any infrastructural developmental project which results in degradation and other negative impacts in those protected areas. And the fifth point emphasized, if in accordance with the concept of carrying capacity, nature tourism and ecotourism are promoted, they will result in creating conducive environment for the area, provided visitors should respect nature and sentiments of the local communities. Then Article 4, which titled as Tourism as User of Cultural Heritage of Mankind and Contributor to its Enhancement. It says that all the tourism resources in the world are common heritage, but the local communities should be more responsible for the protection of these resources and should pass on to the future generations. Further, each type of monument requires a particular care, and specialized public and private agencies should step in forward for maintaining and protection of these heritage. It emphasizes upon financial resources generated from the visitations of the tourist in the cultural sites and heritage monuments should be spent on the safeguarding, upkeep and development of the sites along with the local area. Then it emphasizes local traditions and cultural values including handicrafts, folk songs, folklores should be presented in such a way to the tourist so that they can survive and flourish permanently rather than causing harm to become standardized. Now we'll discuss Article 5, which is titled as Tourism, a beneficial activity for host countries and communities. Article 5 of Global Code of Ethics emphasizes upon tourism as beneficial activity to the host communities, resulting in economic and social empowerment by way of cultural exchange and generation of employment. The first point it focused is community-based tourism initiatives should be promoted so that local population associated with tourism activities get benefit in terms of economic gains, social development and cultural protection. The tourism should particularly result in creating direct and indirect employment to the local community. Secondly, tourism policies should result in increasing the standard of living of the local communities along with meeting the requirements to fulfill their daily needs. The planning of the infrastructural requirements should integrate to the extent possible the locally available material, skills and manpower at priority. And thirdly, the highly sensitive and vulnerable areas like mountains, coastal areas and islands needs special attention for their specific problems of infrastructure development and limited scope of economic activities. And lastly, the Article 5 emphasizes upon the government and the non-government organizations with the help of trained researchers and tourism professionals should carry out studies to understand the impact of developmental projects on environment and local community. The results of these surveys should be implemented with great transparency and, if required, a dialogue with the local population should undertake. Further, we'll take up Article 6, which is titled as Obligations of Stakeholders in Tourism Development. Article 6 of the Global Code of Ethics emphasized upon the role of the tourism professionals to educate tourists about the condition of the destinations, their security and safety issues, insurance requirements, along with providing understanding about cultural and social barriers in the destinations they intend to visit. The picture represents the main stakeholders in the tourism industry. They are the tourists, the tour operators, the government, the local residents, non-government organizations, and their interest and benefits, social responsibility, and environmental awareness lies with all these stakeholders. It further emphasizes that it is a desirable ethical behavior from the tourism professionals to provide their tourists an objective and required information about the places of destination, political stability issues, and all those things which a tourist should know. There should also clarify the terms and conditions, the financial compensation in case of the breach of the contract or otherwise. It further emphasizes that it is also the responsibility of tourism professionals to make a proper coordination with the public authority to ensure the safety and the security of the tourists. Such coordination is required in terms of accident prevention, protection of the health and food safety, processing of insurance for the fair compensation, etc. It further says tourists are free to follow their religious practices during the time of their travels, and it is the responsibility of tourism professional to provide them conducive environment so that they can practice their religion without any fear and obstruction. And lastly, it focused upon the governments of the tourist generating regions as well as the tourist receiving regions in coordination with their tourism professionals and trade associations should take necessary steps to ensure a mechanism in place for repatriation of tourists in case of bankruptcy of the organization responsible for the travel arrangements of a tourist or group. One more point, it emphasizes governments of the tourist generating regions have the responsibility to issue advisories to their nationals who intend to travel abroad regarding the political scenario and the safety issues there. On the other hand, the governments of the tourist receiving regions should not exaggerate the information in order to provide benefits to the tour operators of their countries and thereby putting the interest and safety of the tourist at stake. Lastly, it focused the print and electronic media, specifically those who involved in travel journalism, should take it ethical in spreading the information which is balanced, accurate, reliable and trustworthy from the viewpoint of the planners and the tourist. The latest technologies in new way of communication should be used to promote the sustainable tourism, and they should avoid promoting such type of tourism having negative impacts on the society. For example, sex tourism. Now we'll discuss about Article 7, which is right to tourism. Article 7 of Global Code of Ethics says tourism is a right of individual regardless of the color, creed, nationality and economic status. The first point of it emphasizes all the inhabitants of the world shares equal right for the discovery and enjoyment of the resources available on the planet Earth. The leisure time can be utilized in more sustainable manner by the national and international tourists, and there should not be any obstacles placed in its operations. Secondly, within the provisions of Article 24 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Article 7D of International Covenant of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, tourism activity is regarded as universal right, including having leisure time from work and how are disposable incomes. The third point emphasized upon the governments should support the social tourism activity to the people during their leisure time and holidays and provide facilities for its development. Fourth and the last point emphasized tourism for all means people with disabilities, old age people, youth, family and students should be encouraged and facilities should be provided as per their requirements. Then Article 8, which is titled as Liberty of Tourist Movements. Students, Article 8 of Code of Ethics elaborates the liberty of tourist movements from the viewpoint of tourist, the government and the host community. It emphasizes tourists should comply with the national and international regulations for the liberty to move within their own countries as well as in other countries in accordance with Article 13 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. According to the Act, they should have access to the places of transit and stay, including visits to tourist attractions and cultural sites, without being subject to excessive formalities or any type of discrimination. Secondly, all tourists should have access to the mode of communication, whether within the destination or outside the destination. Without any discrimination, they should have access to the local administration, health services, legal guidance, and free access to the consular representative of their respective countries. Thirdly, for the personal information and data of the tourist, specifically electronic data, the tourist should have equal rights in accordance with the citizens of the country they are visiting. And fourthly, in case of international border or the areas which fall under the special international agreements between the countries, the formalities and procedures for visa and health checkups should be simplified to provide easy access and crossing to international tourists. There should be special agreement between the countries for providing access to the individuals for tourism purpose. The entry fee and visa charges for tourism purpose should be waived off or gradually reduced to minimum level to promote international tourism among all countries. And the fifth point emphasizes position of easy convertibility of foreign currencies to the international travelers should be made friendly. Article 9, which is the second last article, titled as Rights of the Workers and Entrepreneurs in the Tourism Industry. Article 9 discusses the importance of protecting the rights of the workers, specifically local community, regarding economic safety and socio-cultural development. First point of this article emphasized the national and the state governments through their various departments should protect the fundamental right and the workforce employed in the tourism industry. The due consideration must be given to the seasonality factor of the tourism industry and its global dimension. The second point says For the benefit of the industry and the workers, it should be ensured that employees should have minimum level of professional training. Measures should be taken to provide job security with minimum level of standard of living. Third point says there should be an opportunity for unemployed person to improve their professional skills by way of training under the existing national laws. Entrepreneurs should be motivated to initiate their ventures in tourism and hospitality industry with minimum restrictions for entry level and support in all required aspects. The fourth point says the best practices across the globe should be shared at executive and workers level to foster the development of tourism industry. Such initiatives can be taken in accordance with the national and international agreements and laws. The last article of the Global Code, that is Article 10, which is titled Implementation of the Principles of the Global Code of Ethics for Tourism. Article 10 of Global Code of Ethics for Tourism suggests a way out for the effective implementation of the code. It emphasizes for the implementation of these codes of ethics, responsibility is of the government and the private stakeholders. They should coordinate their efforts in monitoring and effective application of these principles. Secondly, there should be recommendation by the stakeholders regarding the role of international organizations, including United Nations World Tourism Organization at the first place. The government and the non-government organizations should, with due regard to the international law, act progressively with the promotion and the development of the tourism along with protecting human rights and the natural environment. And lastly, if there is any dispute problem in the implementation of the Global Code of Ethics for Tourism, should be put in front of committee known as World Committee on Tourism Ethics. Implementation and follow-up of the Global Code of Ethics in Tourism Business. The first by United Nations World Tourism Organization and member states. For the latest survey 2014-15, the UNWTO Secretariat has revealed responses from 61 member states and territories, including one non-member state. Regions with the highest response rate are Europe, 42% of the member states, Africa with 24%, and Americas again with 24%. Furthermore, 29 member states report that they have incorporated some principles of Global Code of Ethics into their national legislation, while 27 other countries members used the principles of the code as a basis when establishing national regulations or policies. For instance, the Government of India, in collaboration with United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Save the Children and the Pacific Asia Travel Association, produced a code of conduct for safe and honorable tourism, aimed at ensuring safety in tourism for both tourists and local communities. The action most commonly undertaken by member states to promote the Code of Ethics has been its dissemination to various tourism stakeholders, with 66% of respondents, followed by translation into national and local languages in 46 countries. For its implementation, it is further suggested a number of interesting regional trends were identified from the best practices reported in the survey. The region of the Americas seems to put a special focus on campaigns and legislation on the protection of the children's rights in tourism. For example, the Ministry of Tourism of Argentina adopted in 2013 a program called Responsible Tourism and Child Protection, which includes several international cooperation actions, awareness raising in academic sector, and cooperation with the private sector. Peru reported that Ministry of Tourism is engaged in campaigns to prevent the sexual exploitation of children in tourism since 2005, and that National Code of Conduct targeting the private sector has been established, which had 1,206 subscribers in 2013. Moreover, Uruguay adopted a national regulation 398/13 in December 2013, obliging tourism providers to implement a series of measures geared towards the elimination of child exploitation in tourism. In the summary, although the overall response rate is higher than in the last implementation survey of 2010, it is still rather surprising to see a low rate of replies from the national tourist associations in regions such as South Asia and the Pacific and the Middle East. The voluntary nature of Global Code of Ethics itself is possibly one of the decisive factor explaining the so far moderate level of application of the ethical principles by NTAs, as well as the reluctance to report relevant implementation actions undertaken in this field. The World Committee on Tourism Ethics has therefore considered it necessary to improve the implementation of code and has, in consultation with United Nations World Tourism Organization's Secretariat, entrusted the legal advisor with the preparation of a proposal for converting the code into a legally binding international convention by the private sector. With the globalization, growing mobility and competitiveness, the safeguarding of human rights and respect for the environment and society in the way of doing business have suffered in many industrial sectors, including tourism. One way of addressing the negative impacts of business has been through voluntary commitment to corporate social responsibility. To leverage transparent and responsible business practices, the United Nations World Tourism Organization Secretariat initiated in 2011 a campaign geared towards the private sector by inviting tourism enterprises and their trade association to adhere to the private sector commitment to the Global Code of Ethics for Tourism. With the signing of the commitment, signatories also accept the obligation to report to the World Committee on Tourism Ethics on implementation measures they have taken. They are allowed to use a special logo in their communication materials as long as they meet the reporting requirements and there are no indications or complaints about unethical practices. As of 30th June 2015, 417 companies and associations from 57 countries has signed the private sector commitment to the Global Code of Ethics. However, only 363 entities which signed the commitment prior to 1 January 2015 have received the survey questionnaire for completion. Out of these 363 entities, a total of 134 have responded to the questionnaire, including 82 companies and 52 associations. It should be noted that the data collection process is ongoing as new entities engage continuously in the initiative. By the companies, as of 30 June 2015, the UNWTO Secretariat had received survey responses from 82 companies out of 189 that stands 43%. Most replies originate from the Americas, which also shows the highest response rate. Unexpectedly, all responding companies are based only in 10 countries, namely Armenia, Chile, Costa Rica, Germany, Indonesia, Japan, Mexico, Philippines, Qatar, and Spain. In terms of implementation, most respondents have integrated the code in already existing sector-specific ethical codes, internal codes of conduct, CSR policies and programs. The code was also frequently integrated in staff training and workshops. While several companies ensure a policy of equal opportunities and accessibility, concentrate initiatives aimed at promoting social equity, gender equality, and accessibility are scarce. Implementation by associations. The reporting questionnaire was sent to 175 associations which had signed the commitment up to December 2014. As of 13th June 2015, the UNWTO Secretariat had received responses from 52 associations, that stands 30% only. Most replies originate from Europe, followed by Americas, while no reply was received from the Middle East. As in the case of the companies, associations also report an even distribution of their CSR policies in the 5 selected areas. While governance and business ethics was the most frequently addressed area, innovative CSR projects were most often related to social equity and human rights, as well as to environmental sustainability. Furthermore, several associations report about taking part in European Union supported travel life sustainability system for tour operators and travel agencies, a training, management and certification initiatives for tourism companies committed to implement sustainable practices. On its online platform, Travel Life offers educational tools, exams, and step-by-step certification process. The program includes a wide range of sustainability criteria, which is the organization must meet in order to be part of the project, including working against all kinds of human abuse such as sex tourism and child labor. The majority of the respondents seems to have already a consolidated track record in CSR policies. For most, implementing the Code of Ethics allows them to broaden the scope of their CSR policies by using an international tourism framework while being part of global initiative. So, the students, let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. In the last decade, technology is changing the way of travel in a meaningful way through a wide range of web pages or mobile applications that are used for travel preparation, ticket purchase, reservation systems, accommodation, search for information about leisure and culture within the desired tourist destination, as well as the orientation in it. The use of such technologies in the destination is related to the term smart destination. This destination is innovative in terms of products and services it offers, responsible with the environment and with the people, while incorporating technology universally accessibility through the value chain of the tourism experience to be more sustainable and more competitive. To facilitate the understanding of the principles of Global Code of Ethics for Tourism by the tourist, a more user-friendly text and format of the leaflet, The Responsible Tourist Traveler, was prepared by World Committee on Tourism Ethics, prepared on the occasion of the International Year of Sustainable Tourism for Development, the Tips for Responsible Travel 2017 brochure highlights those principles of code directly related to the tourist in order to help guide travelers in making their behavior even more responsible. Thank you.